Of a series which he created himself called Concrete. Concrete is among the few genre comics that never insults the reader's intelligence. Please welcome Paul Chadwick. Do we look dignified now? Are you relieved that you're not doing an impressions contest?
Indeed I am.
Well, how does this compare to other comics events you've been to so far?
You know, it feels like when I went to in northern Spain one time, where I was on a stage like this. And it was very hard because you'd make a joke and you'd have to wait for it to be translated. And you'd start to sweat. And maybe there'd be a little polite chuckle or maybe that you were just mistranslated and they crack up.
Well, let me ask you about, it's hard to switch gears, we've been doing that silly stuff, but the current Concrete storyline, which might be my favorite of the bunch, I think. It's been 5 years since the last one?
Don't rub it in.
Oh, sorry. I just kind of wondered why so long
It's been over 6 years, actually.
Okay. And kind of what's been the road to getting a new Concrete one? Were you getting burnt out on Concrete, or?
Not at all.
Okay.
But I did get in a financial squeeze. And although Dark Horse is very generous, I'm very slow with Concrete anyway. So I took some quicker paying work in the meantime.
Diana Schutz had actually told me 4 years ago, oh, he's working on a new Concrete.
Well, I never stop. I've got files full of story notes and paintings and for covers in the future. I want to do this the rest of my life.
I assume you regard Concrete as that's your baby. That's the main. Tell the crowd just a little bit about the genesis of the idea.
This goes back 20 years. Very Freudian. I always have liked lots of heavy covers on me when I sleep. And I used to imagine myself buried in rubble, which was comforting somehow. And, just asking the next question, well, what if I were covered with rock? And then what would I do with my life if I were covered with rock? And some story ideas came out of that.
Could you talk a little bit about the current storyline? About the population issue. How'd you come up with that? Was it easy to work Concrete into that storyline, or did it start with Concrete?
You know, I've always, ever since reading The Population Bomb years and years ago, it's sort of been my pet anxiety. And I guess years ago, Mike Richardson said, you know what you need to do with Concrete, Paul, is change the characters' lives drastically. And we can make a lot of noise about it. And I thought, well, maybe it is time. Because I think there's comfort in repeating certain things. I always start my stories in Concrete's warehouse with that concrete chair. I think you need touchstones like that. But also you need to shake things up now and then. And what shakes up life more than having a kid? And I was at that place in my life, too. I just recently become a father, and you know, you realize youth and freedom are going to be things of the past, but there are good things to come from it, too. And in the classic way of cartoonists doing strips about all their anxieties, I combined overpopulation and parenthood and sex and everything I worry about. So financial problems, too.
It goes so well together.
And that's the witch's brew that this series came from.
You've done quite a bit of work for hire over the years, for DC, with Dark Horse, of course, lots of like storyboard work and things like that in Hollywood. From what I've read, it feels like you take those projects pretty seriously. I mean, they may not be as near to your heart as Concrete, but it seems like that you're doing your best job with those. Do you regard those sometimes as a burden? I mean, do you enjoy those? Do you feel sometimes like you just have to do them?
Well, you know, the beauty of taking that kind of work is that you finish it. And, you know, working years and years on a series, gratification just seems to recede over the horizon. And this has been a great year for me. You know, not only the Concrete series has come out, but the Matrix game, and I'm doing interviews every week and quoted in the New York Times, and this is great. But
I don't know if you noticed, but there was a month there when that interview with Chadwick was in like every Marvel comic or every DC comic or something like that.
I don't know what the one you're talking about, but yeah, I've been all over the place. But the thing is, you know, Peter and Craig know this too, that you're preparing a project that goes, and you're writing and drawing and lettering it and dealing with the advertising and dealing with coloring covers, and in the case of this series, I toned it myself in Photoshop. And doing the letters pages. You're never done with an issue. You're just never done. You know, doing those fill-ins on The Last Man or Doctor Strange and Deadpool, and I'm not sure any of those were very particularly successful. It was so nice to turn in a job, know that it was going to be taken care of in inks and color and so on, and then appear without hanging around the studio for another year and a half.
Have there been any particular ones that you have especially enjoyed, or that, yeah?
Well, the Matrix stories, they were originally done for the website, and they're putting out comics now because all movie directors really want to do comics.
They're looking at doing films as their way in.
Those I'm very happy with. But again, I did everything on them. I colored it myself, and
There have been 2 collections of the Matrix comics, and actually Pete is in at least one of those books as well.
that's right. He does this great story where
And both Pete's and Paul's are, in fact, there's several good stories in it. There's several that are just kind of pretty, but there are several quite good stories there.
I just wanted to spill the beans in the premise because it's so funny.
Go ahead.
Is that this guy wants to get the ultimate home entertainment system, and he's feeling pretty full of himself until he sees the architects. Okay, only half of you have seen the movie, but
Let me translate
I loved it, Pete.
Let me translate it for you. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about...
Before I slide anything, I love working on The Last Man. Brian Vaughn's a great writer. He also sends us scripts with about 15 internet links for reference. So if it's a particular samurai sword, he'll give you pictures for it.
I wondered if that was one that maybe you had kind of requested or been happy to get anyway. Do you have any cloud at Dark Horse, like with which Star Wars assignments you get or who you work with or anything like that?
You know, I'm like everybody else. I pitch stories.
Okay.
I actually pitched that Darklighter thing years before it was accepted.